Hello and welcome to our candidates debate for the Mansfield Town elections for 2021. We're featuring the candidates for the select board race. And this is brought to you thanks to help from Mansfield Cable Access. I'm Donna Whitehead of the Journal News Independent and Wicked Local, and I will be the moderator. There are two candidates for one 3-year seat on the select board, incumbent Neil Ryan and FinCom member Walter Wilk. Each candidate will be making opening and closing statements and asked a series of questions on local issues. And some of these questions incorporate issues that were submitted by the public to the best of our ability. We'll begin first with opening statements. And I'm just starting alphabetically. So Neil, you can go first.
Okay. Thank you, Donna. Thanks for hosting this forum. And thank you, Walter, for participating today. It has been my privilege to serve on the Mansfield Select Board over the past 3.5 years. And with your vote, I hope to continue the positive momentum that we've got going here in Mansfield. When I first joined the board back in 2017, I promised to focus on Mansfield's downtown. As a longtime member of the Downtown Advisory Committee, I have worked to ensure that we continue to improve our downtown infrastructure. And over the past couple of years, I'm proud to report that we built the Harry Chase Place parklet behind Jimmy's Pub. We've improved access to Fulton Pond. We added 105 new downtown parking spots, implemented a comprehensive new parking plan, installed new holiday decorations, planted more trees, and completed many other improvements. I was also a member of the subcommittee that reached agreement recently to sell the empty fire station on North Main Street to a local restaurant owner. And in doing so, we listened to many within Mansfield and made sure to preserve the building's historic facade. I'm glad to see that Walter and I are in agreement about the importance of economic development and growing our tax base. I'm confident that the marketing plan we have launched to attract life sciences and other large employers to town will pay off. I also believe strongly that the town needs to hire an economic development officer sooner rather than later. And during my time on the select board, I've tried to keep an open mind on every issue that's up for debate. I don't make snap judgments. I consider all sides of each issue in order to make the best decisions for everyone here in Mansfield. I've also worked to build consensus among my fellow select board members and to keep our debates civil and productive. Despite the many challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic over the past year, the select board has continued to make great progress on many of its published goals. I'm proud to say that through teamwork, patience, and persistence, Mansfield is moving in the right direction. And with your vote on May 11th, I hope to keep the positive momentum going. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Now, Walter, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Great, thank you. Donna, thank you. Neil, thanks. And I want to thank Mansfield Cable as well. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Walter Wilk. I was prior chairman of the Finance Committee and currently on the Finance Committee. And on May 11th, I'm once again asking for your vote for Select Board. I've been told by some that the Finance Committee is only advisory. So I want to get elected to the Select Board where I can better achieve the concrete ideas that I have on how the board can improve residents' quality of life, while being fiscally prudent and keeping your tax dollars where they belong, in your wallet. It is time that the Select Board added a financially focused perspective to the debate, and I believe that based on my experience and background, that I'm best equipped to bring that skill set to the board. I have lived in Mansfield along with my wife, Allison, and 3 daughters for over 26 years. But let me give you a brief background and some experience. Some of you know me professionally, where I served in the Army Reserve for 14 years, or as a managing director at a financial services firm. My day job has allowed me to run a business and connect with a number of developers, companies, and businesses, gaining valuable insight into what makes business move in or out of different towns, what are important factors in the decisions they make, and how you network as a town with business to achieve goals. Some know me from soccer and softball, where I was on the board of directors and also coached. I have worked alongside many of our residents while serving on the Capital Improvements Committee, reviewing major projects throughout downtown. And for others, it was when I was on the Downtown Committee between Bill Ross, the year that we had no town manager, and Kevin, where I worked with local businesses to improve the parking, change the zoning, and where, when I was chairperson, supported the redesign and improved the development and parking lot behind Jimmy's. As you know, you saw a lot of new signage, you saw a lot of new lighting, you saw the extension to the bike path. All of this experience I can bring to the select board and help them become aware and address issues further down the road. Be proactive rather than reactive, balancing the quality of life with our finances. And I look forward to the debate today.
Thank you. Well, playing with my timer here. Okay, now the first question will go to Walter first. Let me know if I talk too fast. I tend to do that. Walter, how do you feel the select board has handled the pandemic over the past year? How do you think the board has collaborated with the school department and Board of Health in addressing COVID? Should anything have been done differently? And what other challenges has the pandemic created for the town in the coming year, and how would you address them if elected?
Well, let me start with, one thing that we had done on the finance committee that helped provide a financial support to the town was 7 or 8 years ago when I first came on the committee, we had no reserve of stabilization fund. We, over the years, put money toward that reserve of stabilization fund that allowed us to have a good base where we didn't have to, like some of our neighbors, have cuts. We were able to transfer over $1 million into our budget last year to help move ourselves through, the downtimes that we had with the lack of revenue that was coming in. So we're able to support our schools and be able to support our town at the same time and continue the services that we have. I think Kevin Dumas, as the town manager, has done an excellent job in handling the employees. I know there were some complaints early on that for a couple of weeks or a month or so, the town hall was closed and that people couldn't get permits and things like that. But I think that, through that, he worked through that and things are back to normal now. One thing that I want to bring up is the fire station. The fire station was abandoned about, a year and a half before COVID. And we had pushed to get the RFP out on time. And one of the hits that we took from COVID was the fact that the RFP didn't go out on time and it went out in the winter of 2019 and came back after COVID had hit. And the impact that we felt as a town is roughly about $200,000 in the value of that building. So, while we did some great things, provided stability to the town, and the town manager managed through it, we also learned from some things, like, if we have tax title properties or we have properties like the police station, the fire station, that we should move and make decisions based on those with input from the community, but we shouldn't just leave things lagging out there over a period of time.
Thank you. Neil, the same question. Would you like me to read it again?
No, that's fine. I'd say, obviously COVID was a learning experience for everybody. But as a member of the select board, I was impressed with our town managers, quick response. We immediately formed, a COVID-19 task force with key members of the town to address, the many issues which, no one had ever dealt with before. Our public health agent, Amy Donovan Palmer, has done a tremendous job communicating to the public about, public health information. Our fire chief, our police chief rallied to help the cause. Our schools, obviously, many challenges there. I know people are looking forward to the return to in-person learning for everyone, including the high school, starting next week. And what I've heard, it's all going very smoothly. So overall, I think we tried to err on the side of caution. And in a global pandemic, I believe that's probably, if you're going to make an error, you're better off erring that way. So I think, our response has been very sound and strong, and we're going to come out of this hopefully even stronger. As far as our finances in relation to the pandemic, yeah, I agree. It was very helpful that we had that reserve to fall back on, something that the Finance Committee and the Select Board have been working together on for many years. So that was good that we had that cushion. Now with the American Rescue Plan, we're getting, significant sums of money from the federal government, which is great in terms of this year's budget. However, I do, worry a little bit that, we want to make sure we keep our discipline and we don't just count on this type of money, in the future, because we know it's hopefully just a one-time thing as far as the pandemic. In regards to the fire station, I just want to say, like one thing I've learned is things in municipal government don't work as quickly as we would all like. I come out of the business world. I'm a small business owner myself. I worked at Fidelity Investments for 15 years. I know how the corporate world works. So there is an adjustment when you're working in the municipal government area. And as I recall with the fire station, at the
You can
time,
wrap up, Neil, you're a little over two.
okay, okay, I'll just end it there. So thank you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'll just, no, it's just maybe put up a hand when you guys are at the 2-minute mark. Would that
Yep.
work? Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
Walter, would you like to respond more to that and give you another minute?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to say coming out of that is, if I was on the select board, I'd now have my plan coming out of COVID, right? And coming out of COVID would be things like, do we keep outdoor dining going forward? Do we put that into our bylaws or our zoning? Like, do we come out and say, hey, the outdoor dining worked well, let's put things like that into our zoning? What's our business plan? Because we know companies are changing the way that they do business. Have we spoken to people in the industrial park? Are we concerned that some are going to be consolidating operations and maybe consolidating operations somewhere else? We know that the whole dynamic has changed now because of COVID. And if I'm elected, I'll make sure that we're ahead of the curve on that and we're not on the back end.
Neil, did you have anything further you'd like to add?
Just one small comment. In regards to the outdoor dining, I'm a big fan of that, big supporter. I agree. We should allow it. In fact, the Downtown Advisory Committee is working on applying for grants from the state that would provide outdoor dining platforms for free to our downtown restaurants. And the town would set these up. So say, for example, you might take 2 parking spaces in front of a restaurant, put these modular dining platforms in place that are safe and attractive to help our downtown businesses, thrive when we come out of this pandemic and into the future. I think one of the good things that came out of the pandemic is all the outdoor dining we saw last summer. I think brings a lot of vibrancy and energy to downtown. So I do everything I can to support that.
Okay, great. On to our next question. Let me just flip over my page here. And this question will go to Neil first. All right. The past year has seen Mansfield residents march to protest the death of George Floyd in Minnesota and the passage of police reform legislation at the state level here. Are racial justice and police reform an issue the select board should be addressing, and how?
Absolutely. I think, recent national events, yesterday's verdict was a positive development, a small step in the right direction. But I think, these events have made clear that systemic racism can be a problem in any community, Mansfield included. So we shouldn't think that we're somehow immune to these issues. I attended the Black Lives Matter rally last spring, and I was impressed with both our police chief, his embrace of these issues, as well as, the speakers at that rally. One thing, we have here in Mansfield is this approach called problem-oriented policing that has been really successful in trying to solve the root causes of calls for help, whether it's a domestic disturbance or what have you. And we focus on getting those people services rather than just arresting people and tossing them in jail. And over the past several years, our arrests are way down. So I think that we're working in the right direction. The select board has discussed this, and we have 2 goals on our 2021 goals, which are published on the town website. We have 2 things specifically. We want to focus on developing and implementing a strategy to address diversity, equity, inclusion issues that affect our workforce, our boards, and committees. We're also considering reorganizing our HR department to hire a diversity officer, someone to really focus on those issues. Right now, we have roughly 1,000 employees, and I think we have 2 people who work in HR. And finally, we're moving towards, actually the fire department has already moved off of the civil service system. So if you're not familiar with that, that really limits our ability to look for a diverse workforce. So by getting off of that and moving off the system with the police force, which we're negotiating now, we can cast a much wider net when we do have openings in the police and fire and to try to attract a more diverse workforce.
Thank you. Walter, the same question. Would you like to hear it again?
No, I think I wrote it down. I'll expand on some of the stuff that Neil talked about. I agree with him, regarding the civil service and the change that the select board's making with fire and the change that they hope to make with the police department. No matter what business you're in, casting a wider net is always the best, so you can get the best in front. I know that our police department has always been tops when it comes to training, hiring the right people, and it has great leadership. And if you look at a lot of these instances, those are the places where it broke down. I agree that that we need a strategy as a town, which we're starting to cobble together now, to address this. And it's addressing it everything from what I discussed with training, et cetera, to having a diversity officer, to changing the rules so we can cast a wider net and get a more diverse workforce. I agree with the moves that the select board is making in this area.
Okay. Neil, did you want to add anything further?
No, I guess I would just add, the addition of a diversity officer, is something we're targeting for 2022. So I'm hoping, the finances will support that.
Walter, anything more you'd like to add on that subject?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, thanks. Now the next question will go to Walter first. What would you like to see the town do with the former police station, and how and when would you like to make that happen?
Okay, so the police station, we've known when that went over. That's another example. I know I talked about the fire station earlier. The police station is another example of something that's kind of been hanging out there. I was part of the group that worked on the public safety building, the DPW garage. We had a survey done. It was done several years ago, and it basically told us how much it would cost to repair the building and what the issues are with the building. So we as a town have to decide we want to keep that building, renovate the building, do something with the building, knock it down, put a council of aging or something else that the town wants, or sell it, to a third party. Quite frankly, we knew this was coming off the tax rolls when the 911 sent it to Foxborough. I mean, not the tax rolls, coming out of 911 when it went to Foxborough. And again, that's something, as Neil had said, government works slow. I see that, but I also disagree in some respects where, we should have, by now, we should have had an updated review of what the issues are with the building. We should have a review of what we could make if we sold that property. And we should have, at this point, had 2 or 3 ideas of what we're going to do with the property. The longer that property stays unused, it continues to deteriorate. So we might get to a point where we want to keep it, but repairing it is going to be more expensive than knocking it down and building another building for whatever town use we decide. But I think it's important to get the town's feedback. And I promise, in the first 6 months, we will come to, if I'm elected, we will come to some type of resolution as to whether we keep it, sell it, renovate it, and what we're going to do with it, and what town office or council on aging or other facilities will use it.
Thank you. Neil, the same question. Would you like to hear it again?
Sure. No, I'm fine with that. So I think that property is, a gem, really. It's a beautiful spot. I don't support at this time the idea of selling it for, a quick infusion of cash. I kind of try to think more longer term. When you think of the town's new master plan that calls for, the construction of a multi-generational community center, that's something I would strongly support for that property. In terms of the timing, I think it's important to note that our hands have been tied. This goes way back and it's very complicated, so forgive me, but Middle Class Tax Act of 2012, its Congress was set to auction off this radio spectrum in January of 2021, which would have required us to move our radio tower, our emergency response radio tower that's still there. But we actually wrote as a board to Congress, as did many others, and eventually just this past January, they finally decided not to auction off this radio spectrum. And as a result, we can keep our tower there. So until that decision was finalized, our hands were tied. So it wouldn't have made any sense to, start plans to move the tower or build a new tower. So now that we have that cleared up, the select board is focusing on this issue. We want to get, I think we need, input from the community. I put this in my newsletter out to my constituents. I want to hear what people are saying. The overwhelming sentiment I'm seeing is that people want to keep that property and turn it into either a new council on aging or perhaps a combined community center that would serve seniors as well as teenagers and young people. So, I agree that we need to get moving on this soon and fast. And now that we have the clarity of the radio issue resolved, we can do that.
Thank you. Walter, anything further on this question?
Yeah, my response was just about selling it. It was about weighing out what options we have and how much those options cost. I agree with Neil. Once you sell something on the water there, it's not gonna, you're not gonna be able to get it back. But here's the issue: is we should know what all the options are. That's number one. And number two, those radio towers are supposed to be moved, and we're going to be moved over to the public safety building. So that was something, that for whatever reason was delayed. And I know that the 911 center did also cause some delay for it, but there was no reason that there couldn't have been all the meetings, and we could have chosen at this point, because now we're 3-4 months out from January. At least when that ruling came back, we would have known what we're going to do with that location.
Neil, anything further?
I would just note the head of SEMREC, our regional dispatch center. I mean, his advice to us is if you have a working radio tower, don't touch it. It's too much work and money to move it. So we really had no choice but to leave it there for now. And basically our options boil down to refurbish the existing building, or tear it down, build a new building, or sell it. I mean, those are really basically the three options. And our town manager spoke last week that his opinion is that we do not sell it. The thing that kind of leans in favor of refurbishing is that the zoning would be grandfathered in there. If we build a new building, we might not be able to build as close to the pond as we currently are. So that seems to be, to me, the most likely avenue. And I should mention there is a new grant opportunity that might secure us $4 million towards the cost of this project. So I'm hoping that we can do that.
Okay. Thank you. The next question goes to Neil first. The town has funded a marketing campaign to spur economic development in town from the reserve fund in recent years. What is the purpose of this campaign, and do you feel it has been successful? One goal in connection with these plans is to hire an economic development director. Do you agree this position is needed, and why?
Yeah, sure. I've supported this. I've supported every economic development initiative that's come up for a vote over the past 3.5 years. This particular plan, we had phase one, which was to really build a brand for the town, because we had no real brand. So Penta Communications is a firm we hired. They've done a great job with that. We've got some social media posts out there and so forth. There's a lot more we need to do. Phase two of this is what we recently voted to spend money on, and that includes hiring, not hiring an economic development officer. That's what we want to do next. But one thing we want to do is get platinum certified bio-ready. The life sciences biotech sector is huge. We believe we are ideally suited to attract those companies. We've already got the bio incubator on Francis Ave. So by getting that, we're currently gold level certified, but if we get up to the higher level, that may help us attract more companies. We purchased a subscription to something called CoStar that allows us to track commercial leases that are coming due and try to reach out to those companies. But again, we need someone whose job it is to actually make those calls and do that outreach. Those are all in the works. I also believe we need to carve out as part of that kind of a sub focus on the downtown, because we want to attract large employers to our business park and so forth. And those biomanufacturing jobs routinely pay more than $100,000 a year. So those are great jobs. But we also I think we need a special focus on, filling those empty spaces in downtown. Right now, it's no one's job to sit there and, reach out to a successful business in a neighboring town and say, hey, why don't you open up a second location here in Mansfield? So that's something I support and will push if I'm reelected.
Thank you. Walter, the same question. Would you like to hear it again?
No, I think I have it. I think that's one of the benefits of running, because that was one of the planks I ran on last spring in early summer before the election, was the fact that we really didn't have a marketing plan to bring the business forward. I was extremely happy to hear that the select board, especially since 2 of the members were up for election last year, actually reacted, and it took until September. We did hire Penta Communications, and I agree with Neil. You know, if you remember the last 6 or 7, when I was chairperson of the finance committee, we always talked about the lack of business. We don't know, you know, when the leases come up. We don't know what companies are looking. You know, we've discussed it with the prior town manager, the interim town manager, the select board, in the current town manager. And I can't tell you how happy we are that finally, you know, people have listened. You know, and I agree with Neil. It can't just be one piece, this bio thing. I think the bio thing's great, but anybody who studied biotechnology knows that it's typically near universities or other feeder companies, and we really don't have that yet. And not to say that we can't, but Cambridge is successful because you have a lot of, you know, you have MIT, you have Harvard, you have other schools and universities that can feed into it. You know, right now we have the industrial park. We have a lot of vacancies. Companies are changing their plans going forward. It's extremely important. You know, to me, I'm kind of concerned that we still haven't built that database of leases. We've been asking for that for 6 or 7 years. And also at the same time, you know, monthly meetings with the decision makers and the stakeholders. You know, not just in the Plymouth in the Cabot Industrial Park, but in the industrial park that Neil's talking about, in downtown, in all the areas. You know, we really need to get feedback. We need to build relationships at the corporate level with the larger companies and the local level with the local and regional companies. You can see up on 123, company came in, put in 4 warehouses right across from Dunkin' Donuts. They never even came to us. New England Ice Cream, they opened up next door in Easton, never came to us. You know, so there's a lot of opportunities that we've missed. My concern and the concern of others on the finance committee, and what I've heard too, is, you know, we're coming out of COVID. We can't afford to lose any more business or to have companies downsize, and we get hit with that.
Thank you. Neil, would you like to respond at all?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with really much of what Walter's saying. And, you know, I, for one, when I hear good ideas, whether it comes from the FinCom committee or whomever, you know, I listen. So I support those ideas. Recently, I attended a meeting with the former head of Mass Biotech and our town manager and some members of the Industrial Development Committee. And one thing we learned, you know, that was good news, I thought, was that our business park tends to have a lot of like big box type buildings, which are not really ideally suited for research and development. Those jobs tend to stay in Cambridge and in Kendall Square and so forth. But the manufacturing jobs, that's exactly the type of space they're looking for. So we are well suited. We just need to get out there and beat the bushes and get that message out that we're here and we're ready for them. And I also mentioned, you know, that we've had a lot of good economic news in the past year. You know, despite the pandemic, and let's keep in mind this is a competitive landscape and businesses are free to go wherever they want. But that said, you know, we had Amazon opened up a big facility here in Mansfield. We've got the new and smaller business, Trattoria Romano. We've got later this year, marijuana dispensary opening, a marijuana grow facility. We've got a new hotel going up. The chocolate factory is moving along. Station Square downtown is open. So all that happened during, you know, the middle of a pandemic. So I would say, for the most part, you know, things are moving in the right direction. Can they always move more in the right direction? Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think this plan we have in place will help us accomplish that.
Walter, did you want to add more?
Yeah, just real quick, you know, on Amazon and Trattoria, that there's a push-pull strategy. They found us, and I'm happy that they found us. They were, you know, the commercial real estate agents brought them here, and that's how they found us. I want a pull strategy where we're pulling them to us. We're not just hoping that somebody has to look and find Mansfield. I mean, we're on the 495 train tracks, and our industrial park should be a gem, and not to say that it's not in decent shape, but it could be a heck of a lot better, and we can get all those empty spaces filled. And also one more thing on hiring a business development coordinator, you need a framework. We just can't hire somebody and say, hey, good luck, go out there and go out there and get business. We really need to have a framework. What's the role? What are the goals? What are the objectives? And what is success? What's the criteria for success? But thank you.
Thanks. Next question. This question will go to Walter first. And this is one actually I think I had a lot of interest from the public in. The select board will soon receive recommendations from the trash and recycling task force. Some residents are concerned that the town could add new fees for trash disposal, which is currently covered in the operating budget. Should they be concerned, and why or why not?
Well, here's always been my issue with the select board and the position they've taken in the past. We about 2.5% of our budget is trash, right? Is the fees to get rid of the trash and to do the recycling. I have, if we want to go to a pay to throw, and that's what the town wants to do, I totally support it and I agree to go with it, as long as that tax money comes out of of your tax bill and your taxes are reduced by whatever, 150, 100, 200, whatever it is per household. And then you can use that money to, to pay for the bags, right? And dispose of trash. In the past, it's always been, we're going to give part of that money back or half of that money back or some of that money back. So it's really a hidden tax increase. And I support most of it talks about smaller, larger recycling cans, smaller trash bins and things like that. I have no problem with that. My concern is that, especially with the elderly people and some of the younger people in town, they can't afford to spend another $400 on taxes, by having to buy bags or $250. So as long as the select board takes out, and that's what I would do if I was in the select board, make sure it's a dollar for dollar credit. If we're spending $2 million, then the tax rate gets reduced by $2 million. And then people can buy the trash bags.
Okay. Neil, same question.
Oh, sure. This is a subject near and dear to my heart, if you know me. As I'm one of 2 select board representatives on the trash and recycling subcommittee. So I'd like to clear up some, speculation I've seen online about this. We formed this subcommittee about 18 months ago because we know that our contract is coming up with our waste hauler, and we wanted to consider all the options available to us if for a new contract. And we didn't want to just default to the status quo. We wanted to see, are there other ways to skin this cat, so to speak. I will say, trash and recycling is a very complex subject, and we've looked at a lot of different things. I have in-depth knowledge on these issues in my role as with the Keep Massachusetts Beautiful. I personally delivered a talking trash and recycling presentation 35 times across Massachusetts this past year. So I said, we wanted to consider all the options, and we also wanted to gather input from residents. So that's why we put out that survey. And there was a question in there that said, or asked, would you prefer to have the cost of trash and recycling remain as part of your property tax bill or paid as a separate fee? And most people strongly favored the former, which really was no surprise to us. And the other thing that we heard loud and clear is that residents are extremely satisfied overall with our current system. So the subcommittee will, is now taking that feedback into account, and we will make a recommendation to the select board as to how we're going to proceed. It's my view that the most likely outcome is that we're going to stick with either the same or something very similar to what we have now, with maybe some incremental changes and improvements around the edges. But for the most part, I think our trash and recycling system, it ain't broken, right? So, but we do need to pay for it. And currently we're not actually fully paying for it. So that's something we need to address. But overall, if people are worried about some imminent change on the horizon, it's not coming.
Walter, would you like to respond to that further?
Yeah, 2 things real quickly. As a percentage of the budget, now the budget increases every year by a couple of percent. As a percentage of the budget, the trash has roughly stayed within, 0.5%, 0.75%, 0.2%, depending on what year it is. And just so people understand, a couple of years ago when we got rid of recyclables, people were paying us to give them recyclable materials. Now we're paying them to take it, right? So that's also been an increase, and that's also increased the cost of the trash. Because it's cheaper for them to make it from oil and gas than it is for them to shred them, clean them, shred them, and repurpose them.
Neil, would you like to add anything further?
Yeah, I would just say that it's true that the major changes in the recycling market have thrown recycling programs across the country into a frenzy. There is some good news in that we are starting to invest in infrastructure here in the U.S. to process these materials rather than shipping it all back to China like we used to do until a couple of years ago. We've got, ironically, Chinese companies buying up paper plants in Maine and elsewhere and processing those materials here in the US, which creates jobs. So there is a chance, and it's starting to happen, that the market for these materials may rebound, and someday we may get paid again for those materials.
Thank you. Now, the next question goes to Neil first. The town recently updated its master plan. What is one recommendation in that plan that you would like to see implemented, and how would you work to make that happen?
Well, I would say there's probably more than one thing I'd like to see. One of the recommendations is, regional collaboration, which we've done with our public safety emergency system. All the 4 towns that are currently participating are saving money. We tend to be very parochial here in Massachusetts, where, every town does things their way. So I support any future regional collaborations that will save us money. Other things, it talked about maintaining a cohesive small town identity and character. So while I support economic growth, I also don't want to see, our town just blow up with new buildings and traffic and all the associated challenges that come with that kind of growth. Alternate modes of transportation. We are completely car focused. We need to make our downtown more bike friendly, more pedestrian friendly. Expand GATRA, our regional transportation authority, to make it easier for people to take a bus. And then finally, there's one recommendation in there about green spaces, and I would just add one of which is to have a dog park here in town, and that's something I totally support.
Thank you. Walter,
Can I add one last thing?
Oh, sure.
If I have time. We added a column on our goals at the select board that says, does it have master plan implications? I was the one who actually suggested that, so that any decision we were making going forward keeps that master plan in mind as to whether, are we consistent with that plan in this decision. So I think that's important.
You're all set now?
Yes, thank you.
Walter, the same question. Would you like to hear it again?
No, I think I got it. I think one of the things about the master plan, the select board's job is to coordinate the long range objectives of the town, right? And to put a plan behind it. And I do think in the past we've had master plans done, and a lot of them have had good ideas, and Neil knows this, a lot of it just hasn't been executed on, right? And it's been, typically done, the shelf's been put, it's been put on the shelf. The last one we had did talk about, the fire station, the police station, the DPW garage, but then a lot of the other things that were in it kind of fell apart. So I'm happy to hear that's part of the select board's goals. I would even go a step further than that, and how do you bake it in to the long-term, financial quality of life strategy for the town. The regional collaboration, that was one of the things I picked up on. The 911 center was great. There were other areas that we had done, and I know it's been reversed, but we had a veterans agent that we shared with a couple of towns, saving some money. And there were other areas that we could save money and share with towns. The alternative modes of transportation, I was hot on that. Now we have COVID. You're lucky if there's 10 cars at the train station now in the morning. And I do think that we do need to look at that, with the bike path. And there's so many people commuting into Boston, or at least commuting a year ago when this happened. And that's one of the things I'm talking about, is like, we're going to have to really toggle as we go forward under this new world with COVID for the next 2 or 3 years, whether it's transportation, keeping our identity, regional collaboration, and some of the other things. And as Neil said, I was involved in soccer for years. I love the green space. I love down there at Plymouth Street, where there's a walking trail, and you can play soccer there and stuff. And I'm all for that as well. And I do think the problem with green spaces, not the problem with the issue with it, is once you sell something, you can never get it back. When some of the, actually real quick, I just thought of some of the tax title properties that we had taken were either wet or odd shaped over the last 2 or 3 years. And we recommended, and the select board agreed, that those should be given to the natural, the Conservation Commission, all the different groups. You were able to put dozens of acres back in the town as green space.
Neil, would you like to add anything further on that subject?
Sure. I would just reiterate another thing in the master plan is, in regards to green spaces that Walter's talking about, is we're trying to connect, some of these spaces. So, for example, in the downtown, you've got the bike path. We've got that brand new 10-foot wide multi-use path. We've got new lighting. So we're trying to connect it where it comes in behind Jimmy's Pub on Old Colony Way, with signage that will take you, take someone who hasn't come to Mansfield before take them over to the new paved and lit path that takes you to Fulton Pond, so you can go there and have a picnic lunch. That bike path is going to be extended through Norton in the next couple of years, and eventually it's supposed to go all the way to Taunton. So we'll be at the receiving end of this lengthy bike path that will have a lot of people, and hopefully drawing them into our downtown to spend their money and give it some vibrancy. And then the last point on the master plan was it does talk about a multi-generational community center. So all the more reason to hold on to that property at the police station and work towards that.
I think we might make this the last question coming up and then move on to closing statements if that works.
Sure.
And this goes to Walter. So, what makes you the best candidate for this seat? And then can you name one goal that you plan to accomplish if elected?
I could name a couple of goals very quickly. I think what makes me a good candidate for this role is I'm really the only one that's got a financially focused background and can weigh out, quality of life versus, just finances. The work that I did on the downtown committee was finances and quality of life. For those of you who know me from soccer, I was part of the Fields of Green, and I was able to get the financing from the banks and work with the town to get that turf field put in 10, 12 years ago. And that's a great, green open space. But some of the things that I would focus on is, get the tax title properties that are worth somewhere between $750,000 $1 million sold. Come to ground on what we want to do with the police station. Things like the town manager's review, that was done kind of administratively a year after they gave them a 20% raise. That should have been done when the raise was taken last year, or when the raise was done. So items like that, it's not any one item, it's 3, 4, 5 items, that I would focus on in getting community input and getting there, and also really focus on reducing the increase in the taxes and trying to get the taxes, bring more business to town, get these properties sold, and help people keep their taxes down. So I'm very sensitive to the elderly people and the younger families that are moving into town. So thank you.
Neil, the same question.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. The one time I didn't ask if you wanted to.
Yeah.
what makes you the best candidate for this seat? And name one goal that you'd like to accomplish if reelected.
Sure. I think, my track record of getting stuff done here in Mansfield, dating back to 2008 with the first Great Mansfield Cleanup, the establishment of Keep Mansfield Beautiful, many other accomplishments over the years. So I think, some of the differences between Walter and me might really boil down to kind of leadership style. I believe I am someone who likes to build consensus and work as a team. And I think one of my traits is persistence. So, when it comes to downtown, I wrote a letter to the to the Mansfield News in 2012 entitled, "Let's Make Downtown Mansfield a Destination." And in that letter, I called for the establishment of a downtown advisory committee, which eventually did get created. And I was one of the charter members, and I've been on it ever since. So, when it comes to things like downtown, I've been persisting on that issue for nearly 10 years. So I think that's something I bring, and, patience, persistence, and a willingness to listen. As far as what I'd like to see done, I would again focus on downtown and say, we've really improved the infrastructure. Now let's get people and businesses and events going down there. And obviously COVID has presented challenges there, but coming out of COVID, we can address those. As an example, we launched the Fulton Pond Fall Festival in 2019. It was a tremendous success, brought hundreds of people downtown where they spend their money. I saw people leaving, heading over to Jimmy's Pub and other downtown restaurants. So I would love to see more of that and really, really make our downtown shine.
Thank you. Walter, would you like to add more?
Yeah, as far as leadership style, my leadership style is have rigorous debate, and you can still be collaborative, right? And it's okay for people to disagree. That's why there's an odd number of people on boards, 5, 7, 9, whatever. It's because not everyone has to agree, and it's okay to have rigorous debates. One thing that I really forgot, one of the things I'm most proud of is pushing and fighting to get that stabilization fund put up to several $1 million in the years where we had the money, because we had about a $1.5 million shortfall last year, and there was no federal aid at that point. That was last spring, and we had to vote the budget through in June. Without that, 1.5 million would have resulted in significant layoffs and reduction of services in town. So I know people like, it's great to have the quality of life, but what's the quality of life if you lose 10 teachers, a couple firemen, and police officers? So you really have to balance it. And I am a true believer that you can have rigorous debate and conversation, and you can still be collaborative. There's nothing the matter with that. That's the way it's done in business. You got to pressure test everything to make sure that you're making the right decision and you've got everybody's input.
Neil, anything further?
Yeah, just one final point. When it comes to finance credentials or experience on the select board, we currently have an actuary who works for an insurance company. We have a CPA, and we have a municipal bond expert. And I wouldn't call myself a finance expert, but I'm no slouch. I worked for Fidelity Investments for 15 years and owned my own business. So I think we've got plenty of financial experience on the board. Currently, we've got a separate financial FinCom group. So I think I bring some other kind of intangibles to the equation, things like focusing on the environment, open spaces, our downtown, and other important quality of life issues.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes all of our questions. You guys did great. Now I'm going to move on to closing statements. And Walter will go first. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. All right. Whether in my professional life or my previous times coaching softball and soccer, or my time on the finance committee, I've always tried to address the tough issues. And I demand people hold me accountable for what I say and what I do. And I take the same approach on the select board. As we discussed earlier, I've learned that one can be a leader and still be collaborative. You can still pressure test things, you can still have debate, and you can still be a leader. If elected to the select board, I would work with my fellow members to refocus the board on the roles assigned to it by our town charter. And we talked about it earlier with the master plan to coordinate the long range objectives of the town, right? And that's what we need to do. And over the last several years, I'm happy to hear that this was the first year. And I know that I brought that up in my race of last spring. You've heard a lot of opinions expressed today, and I'm sure that you've seen many social media posts, but I want to move beyond words and tell you the 3 things we had talked about earlier that I would do if elected to the select board. 1 is make a decision in the police station within 6 months. 2 is the town's manager's review. If in the past, that used to be a public forum. That wasn't a procedural review that was done, especially when you're giving a 20% bump. You need to do a review, and it's only fair to the town manager as well. And also at every select board meeting, I would have the first issue always be the economic update. What's Penta Communications doing? Who's moving in? Who's moving out? Who's looking for space? I want you, the voters, to know exactly what I want to do and hold me accountable to my promises. I do not believe in empty goals. I believe in identifying the right plan and executing on it. Some of these missteps have cost a few $100s a year in taxes. And that's what I estimate the select board's in action on some of the low-hanging fruit. We didn't talk about tax title properties. We didn't talk about how much we lost in waiting a year to auction off the fire station, but you can do the math and you can see that it has cost you in higher taxes. So let me thank Donna for hosting the debate and Neil for agreeing for my request to have one. And it's important for voters to hear directly from candidates as to why we should get your vote. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Neil, your closing statement.
Okay, thank you, Donna, for hosting this forum, and thank you, Walter, for your participation. I want to just address one issue before I get into my closing statement. In regards to the town manager's review and raise, I can just say that it was all done in the open meeting, voted on, discussed. So I'm not sure, what this issue is based upon. The town manager's contract is on the town website for anyone who may want to read it. All right, so it has been my privilege to serve on the Mansfield Select Board over the past 3.5 years. And with your vote, I hope to continue the positive momentum that we've got going here in Mansfield. When I first joined the board in 2017, I promised to focus on Mansfield's downtown. As a longtime member of the Downtown Advisory Committee, I've worked to ensure that we continue to improve our downtown infrastructure. Over the past couple of years, I'm proud to report that we built the Harry Chase Place Parklet. We improved access to Fulton Pond, added the 105 new parking spots, implemented a comprehensive new parking plan, installed new holiday decorations, planted more trees, and completed many other improvements. And as I mentioned earlier, we also sold the fire station and really got the outcome I think everyone was hoping for. A restaurant, the historic facade will be preserved, so I think that was a great outcome. And as a business owner and a founder and executive director of the nonprofit Keep Massachusetts Beautiful, and a parent whose 2 daughters attended Mansfield's excellent public schools from kindergarten through grade 12, I bring a broad perspective and an independent mindset to the select board. My track record of community service dates back to 2008 with the formation of Keep Mansfield Beautiful. This volunteer organization has provided hundreds of thousands of dollars in volunteer labor, park benches, trash barrels, recycling bins, trees, and flowers to this town. And I believe the job of a select board member is to be a strong steward of the taxpayers' money, and that's something I've always focused on. But I also believe it's important to focus on our community ties and other quality of life issues. Things like ensuring we have safe open spaces and parks for outdoor recreation, opportunities to enjoy arts and culture such as MMAS, support and services to our growing population of senior citizens, and ensuring that our public schools continue to deliver a top-notch education for our students. I believe the select board needs to do all it can to ensure that anyone, regardless of race, sexuality, or religion, is welcome to live and thrive here in Mansfield. So the bottom line is this: if you believe that I have been an effective member of the select board for the past 3.5 years, and that our great town is moving in a positive direction, then there's no reason to change course now. So that's why I'm asking for your continued support and your vote on May 11th. Thank you.
Well, thank you both. I want to thank you both for taking part in this debate. I want to thank Mansfield Cable Access for their technical wizardry in allowing us to have a debate through Zoom in the middle of a pandemic. And to all of you who are going to tune in and watch this, it will be airing on Mansfield Cable Access and on the Cable Access YouTube channel for anyone who wants to watch it at repetitive times. And please don't forget to vote, whether you do so by mail, early, or in person on May 11th. And anyone with questions about how to take part in the election, but please contact your town clerk's office. Thank you.